just at home.
It's gonna come around again, but sometime when either he's chairing it or I'm chairing it.
As long as it's not me. We ready to go?
Yes.
All right. Oyez. I will call to order the Sierra Madre Planning Commission meeting of Thursday, January 16th. Can we have roll call?
Chair Hutt,
Here.
Vice Chair Dennison,
Here.
Commissioners Catalano,
Here.
Dallas,
Here.
Desai,
Here.
Pevsner, and Spears.
Present.
All right. First, we will entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next, approval of the minutes of the meeting of December 19th. Does anyone have any comments or corrections?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Somewhere, let me see, around line 140 something would be a 145, somewhere in there. You know, I don't know if it was really stated clearly that Mr. Green was a professional landscape architect, but I noticed that when we were looking for something to rely on, that both Mr. Desai and Mr. Dennison were using the word professional opinion, which I thought was an important term to put in there. You know, because it really became the basis for you guys feeling okay with what they were saying. So I'd like to find a place somewhere, like at least in the 140s, where we can reinsert that word professional. I think that it's
I think we said certified arborist, not landscape architect.
you may have done that too. Okay, I do recall the word professional being used
Yeah, I
a
think
couple of times.
his professional opinion, I believe, is what I had asked.
Okay, well, let's find.
Maybe 132, line 132.
You want to say certified arborist there?
That would be a place where there are different ways we could cover that base, but I think it's important that we do.
Okay.
You
Well,
could say the professional opinion of the certified arborist is sufficient.
Perfect.
What line number is that?
That's line 33.
133.
Okay.
I think that would cover it, thank
Right.
you. We can do that?
I move that we approve with the recommended edit.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Next, we'll move on to community input. If there's anybody in the meeting, there's somebody out in the hall maybe, if they want to come and comment on anything not on the agenda? Okay. Seeing no one, we will move on to our public hearing for the evening, which is Hillside Development Permit 1402 and Conditional Use Permit 1408. Do we have a staff report?
We have a staff presentation this evening and PowerPoint.
All right.
So the applicant, LCRA Architecture and Planning, on behalf of Robert Ho, is requesting that the Planning Commission consider a hillside development permit and a conditional use permit for this project, which was originally submitted to the Planning Commission on December 24th, 2014, but was deemed incomplete by staff, and it had several revisions since then, and it has now been resubmitted and updated. And the project application was actually submitted on November 21st, 2019. This is Lot 5, which is indicated on the project site map, which is also located on the east side of Nathaniel Terrace in the northwest portion of the Stonegate development. The adjacent lots 4 and 6 are vacant and do not have approved applications for new single-family development at this time. The property is 23,540 square feet, and it is zoned hillside management and has a general plan land use designation of hillside. The lot has an existing generally flat building pad located near the center of the property, previously graded for the subdivision. Photographs of that site going in clockwise direction, starting from the top left corner. That is looking east at the site from Nathaniel Terrace. It has a slight incline area where the driveway would be located to get to the top of the pad. And then from Nathaniel Terrace looking north at the site. Then on the bottom left, on site, physically on site looking southeast. And also on site looking north. The criteria utilized for the review of this project includes the hillside management zone, the Stonegate Development Design Guidelines, the settlement agreements, which dictate maximum allowable floor area, placement of buildings over slopes, parking requirements, and height restrictions. So the applicant is requesting to construct a 4,343 square foot single-family residence. It has an attached 2-car garage, and that total floor area includes the garage. So construction of a single-family dwelling unit in the hillside management zone requires approval of a hillside development permit. And per condition of approval of tract map 5016, a conditional use permit is required to ensure that the development contrasts with the design of the Carter Barn, Macomber Cabin, and the Willis Estate. Provided is the project information. It is code compliant with all the guidelines that were cited and the requirements of the tolling or the Stonegate Design Guidelines and the settlement agreement. The lot coverage is 4,564 square feet, and that includes all buildings, building structures, and impervious areas. Building height is 23 feet, 10 inches. The gross floor area, which includes the garage, is 4,343 square feet. The setbacks are all under compliance. Front is 35 feet, 6 inches. Sides, 10 feet and 17 feet respectively, and has a rear yard setback of 155.5 feet, and is providing 2-car parking spaces. A neighborhood analysis was prepared, and it sampled 18 properties, which excludes the multifamily and vacant land. It also excludes the calculation of, or the area for the garage. The assessor's office excludes that data. So the average floor area of the neighboring properties, 2,662 square feet. The median, 2,392 square feet. And the average floor area of top 1/3 properties is 4,022. If we compare the proposed project with the analysis above, the proposed floor area, excluding the garage, is 3,924 square feet, which is less than the average of the top 1/3 of the properties by 98 square feet. The area in red is actually noting a correction from the staff report, which cited as the proposed floor area 4,343 square feet, which included the garage. So the proposed project is a new single-family residence. It's 2 stories with an attached 2-car garage and is largely located on the existing flat building pad. The house is designed in the Italian Renaissance Revival style with an asymmetrical primary elevation facing Nathaniel Court, and it also exhibits many characteristic features of the style, including low-pitched hipped gable roof, excuse me, smooth plaster walls with deeply recessed windows and doors, arched openings, casement windows, and French doors with divided lights, classically styled load-bearing columns, paneled doors, and ground floor loggia and front yard deck with balustrade. This is the conceptual site plan, and the building footprint is U-shaped within the main 2-story house on the eastern half and a 1-story garage, porte cochere, and motor court on the western half. So this is a location of the motor court, porte cochere, a sloped driveway to Nathaniel Terrace, and the house wraps around in that location here. This is the conceptual landscape plan, utilizing drought-tolerant plant material and some ornamental material. The location of the infiltration basin is proposed in this location. It'll be an underground basin. The remaining portion of the lot, which isn't evident on this entire plan, continues on out and is left in as natural open space. There are no oak trees within the buildable area or adjacent to adjacent parcels. And because of that, there's no arborist report. The floor plans, it has 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. The house is basically 3,925 square feet. There is also a living room, dining room, family room, library, kitchen, and an elevator. The garage is 419 square feet and is also attached to the house. And the house and garage are located on a nearly flat existing building pad. And vehicular access, as I mentioned, to the attached 2-car garage is from a sloped driveway from Nathaniel Terrace, which and the front west portion of the setback of the house from Nathaniel Terrace is down here, is set back about 35.5 feet. The roof plan, there are some areas that have some flat components to the roofs. And just as a reminder, it's also a condition of approval as of January 1st, 2020. Homes are not to be just solar ready, but actually to have solar panels installed. This project, however, was submitted prior to that, and it was deemed complete and moved forward, so that would not be required. But we could still make that a condition. Could be a challenge also when we look at some of these projects, clay barrel tile roof. This does have the opportunity because of the flat roof components of this design. The building elevations. And these are the colored renderings. As you can see, there are 3 sets of walls. It's actually been revised on the floor plan, but there are 3 walls here. They're 3 feet tall, small retaining walls, just gradually going up the hill, leading to the forecourt with a balustrade fencing detail. The color and materials, which are primarily earth tone with a brighter color selected for the window trim. The exterior walls are medium beige. The cast stone resembles sandstone. The wood doors and panels are painted and are stained dark brown. And the wrought iron is dark gray. The window frames are factory finish medium blue. And those are wood-clad windows. Additional renderings of the property set into the landscape at different views from Nathaniel Terrace. In order for the commission to approve the project, they have to meet required findings. These are the hillside development permit. Generally, I'm not showing all the entirety of the findings and the reasoning, so this is a summary of those, but the project is consistent with the general plan for single-family residential use. It meets all zoning regulations, floor area, height, setbacks, and parking. The new construction is on an existing flat building pad, and the house does not impact ridgeline views. And there was a study for that as well, and that was updated. The native hillside vegetation is preserved. The use of earth tone color palette has been presented, and it also utilizes and incorporates water-efficient landscaping requirements. Conditional use permit findings. And summary, that the house is differentiated from the existing historic structures, meaning the Willis Estate, Macomber Cabin, and Carter Barn, through its Italian Renaissance Revival design. The single-family use is consistent with single-family development in the vicinity, and the project meets all requirements of the zoning code and meets the intent of the general plan. Compliance for Stone Gate design guidelines. The property is a custom architectural design that responds to site conditions. The mass and bulk are reduced with breaks in wall plane, roof variations, architectural projections, and open balconies. There are a variety of window sizes and configurations that add visual interest, and the materials are durable and low maintenance, consisting of stucco, wood, cast stone, and metal. The landscape plan is water efficient and is an integral component to the project design. The alternatives before the commission this evening are to approve the application, approve with modifications, deny and stating the findings, identifying the findings cannot be made and for the reason for rejecting those findings, or continue the project, providing direction to staff and the applicant. Staff is recommending approval or the hillside development permit and conditional use permit subject to the conditions of approval. And that concludes my presentation. We do have a PowerPoint presentation by the applicant if you want to hear that first. And that'll give me a moment to set up.
Okay.
Good evening, Chair Hutt and Commissioners. Happy to be here again to present the project for Lot 5 at Stonegate. Of all the projects we presented, this one is unique in that there is actually a client. Our client will be building this for themselves. So we have worked with them in developing the plans and elevations to fulfill their programmatic needs. They did prefer to go with a more traditional style, something along Italianate. So we have developed the plans and elevations to work in tandem with that. As we look at the floor plan, what I wanted to mention on the site itself, a couple of things that make this unique as well. Our pad for our buildable pad actually really starts about here, which is gives us an extra deep setback. So our setback actually is about here. In order to be able to just build within the pad, our house actually is pushed back a little bit more. Together with that, we did look at a different floor plan for this site. We did push the garage in the back, so as you enter to the driveway, you do go through a porte cochere and access a motor court and garage in the back, so it de-emphasizes that from the street side. What we also did in terms of outdoor spaces, and we'll see as we get to the plans a little bit clearer, is we developed areas that will take advantage of the site. This particular lot, like a lot of these lots, has a great view of the valley, so we did orient some of the outdoor spaces towards this corner, which would then view out towards the valley and take advantage of that. As we look at the plan, we are looking at a little more formal plan, at least in terms of the front and more public spaces. You do enter into a more formal living, dining. Then you come here to second master on the ground floor, really an in-law suite. We have access to the motor court, so we have kind of a carriage entry through here. And then we come into the more private, family-oriented space with the stairs leading up to the second floor, living, dining, and we have the great room, which has the opportunity to open up and really take advantage of the outdoor space next to it and the views out to the valley. We also have a guest bedroom on the ground floor and the garage. So we do have this motor court here that allows for the car to come in and be able to turn and come back out onto the street. Second floor, we have 2 bedrooms and a library upstairs. The master would have its own private balcony, terrace, that has the opportunity again to take advantage of the views. The secondary bedroom has its own balcony with opportunities with mountain views on that as well. As we developed the plan, we also looked at trying to make sure we had some secondary one-story forms. So we do have in the back what was covering over the great room and garage. All this would be one-story roof to help break down the mass of the house. And as we started looking at the architectural style, we started looking around Sierra Madre and adjacent areas for some good examples, Pasadena, San Marino. And we really looked at kind of the classic 1930s Italian home that was really part of the golden age. We looked at that in order to look at details that we might have, opportunities for second story, terraces, balconies, a little more formal, flat elevation, opportunity for arches and balconies, and really brackets, a little more formal treatment at the top with brackets at the eaves. So these are actually flattened versions of our model. We do have a SketchUp model, if you'd like to see that as well. So this shows our street view. It's a very formal, organized elevation with the front entry, frontispiece, and our windows, arch windows, and upstairs loggia. And then our porte cochere creates a nice little punctuation into the motor court. As you go into the sides, we can start seeing the lower masses of the program. We have also looked at trying to create interest on all sides. So here you would have, this is also one-story balcony here. We have an entry that's been articulated as a slight tower with a different wood treatment. As we look towards the rear, we also have the one-story element, the family room articulated with a slightly higher ceiling, kind of punctuating the elevation there. And as we turn to the south elevation, we have the one-story family room together with the side. We have the master balcony here. So as we went around the elevation, we did try to create some articulation in the massing and add interest with the windows and such. And just wanted to show you, again, kind of the photo montage renderings of how the house could look like on site, especially this one with the hillside behind, kind of nestled within the setting. The colors are neutral, so they do blend into the environment. And then finally, these renderings as well, which show the rear of our yard, which really drops down dramatically. All this will be kept natural. And then this is the drop between lot 4 and our lot. Which eventually this will be built with a house, not part of our scope. And then the landscape tries to tie the house nicely into the site with natural drought-tolerant landscaping. That's what I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay,
And as mentioned, we do have a SketchUp if you wanted to look at that.
Does that SketchUp include the larger site, or just the house?
It only includes the actual lot.
do we want to look at the SketchUp first, or does anybody have any questions they want to do now?
My questions all have to do with the site and the ridge line, so I don't need to see that. I think the house is fine itself.
I did have one question. I was I looked at the plans every way I could, and I was having a heck of a time figuring this out. The second story deck above the dining room,
Mm-hmm.
the dining room, living room plane, it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, that the second story deck actually is 6 inches or 8 inches further out than the plane of the wall below it.
It should align.
Okay, so it's supposed to align, so it's
Correct.
just
It doesn't protrude. It's kind of a continuation of the form.
continuation, one big wall all the way up to the
the
railing of the deck.
Exactly.
Okay, that was my question for you, thank you.
I'm interested, I was very enticed by the fact that this plan would have a courtyard. I mean, I think that's an excellent addition, and I think it goes well with the plan, but the courtyard is for cars, not for people.
It is. I mean, it's opportunity, though they don't have young children. I mean, children could play there. It could be a great, place for a basketball net or something. But it really, in this configuration, it works more as a motor court opportunity to have the car turn around and exit.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of space to turn around a car.
It's also not something you can see
Yeah.
from the outside.
Yeah. The other thing is that on all your plans, when I was on the lot, the lot the lot 4 to the south, if you want, that's a pretty steep slope between those two. And the way you have it configured, how are we going to make sure that the people in this house are not looking into the people on lot 4?
Well, I think if we have the elevation, I mean, it's a substantial drop.
It is a
So you'll
substantial
be
drop.
looking at the upper portion of probably the second floor. And on the ground floor,
If you go back one,
What's the lot for?
That slide might have been the one.
I don't know, maybe go, at one point you have one that
There's
shows.
a step, there's a
this
section.
This is the rear.
No, there's
Yeah,
the
but
section.
That's
But
the
this
one
lot, this drop right here
Yeah.
Yep.
is substantial, and one of my thoughts was that if you flip this around, then the second story wouldn't be looming over, there would be less on that side.
Well, and the other thing too, that motor court would never be really usable because it's in shade. I mean, it's north facing. If you flipped it, it actually would be south facing, which actually would make it more usable.
It makes this driveway a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, it
You
occurred to
wouldn't
me
use it as a
that
motor court then.
while I like the design of the house, that when I get on the lot and I look around, my concern is with how it's going to impact its neighbors.
the one below. Well, as you look here, if a house probably would be constructed here, basically, 2-story, it would possibly align with the ground level
What are those numbers? What's that right at the toe of the slope
right in there.
and then the top?
Let me get my glasses.
I looked at the survey, it's a 20-foot.
20 foot?
It's a substantial drop.
Yeah, it's
So
a
you're
lot
basically
bigger than the
looking
up
at the
lot.
roof.
Yeah,
You'll be
the
looking at
upper
the
one
roof.
is not as much, so I figured, well, if they're.
You're gonna be looking at their solar panels.
And then
Not
the
on the
ground
Maybe.
floor,
Those will be on the south, so, yeah.
the ground floor, you'll have a landscape.
They can cook
So
stuff.
that'll start, when you're on the ground level, you really will start just seeing landscape. The second floor,
Yeah, I think it's this face here that is looking.
Yeah, yes,
Right.
yes, you're right.
At a certain extent, you know, the first guy there has dibs in a way. It's gonna be up to the
I totally get it.
the architect of the subsequent house to deal with that.
I mean, part of my concern is how is it going to interact with its neighbors? And we've had a lot of people come to us saying that, you know, this project is a nice project, but it looks into my house and it looks into my yard, and, you know, their sense of, you know, privacy is invaded.
Yeah. Everybody got to see the plot plan when they bought the property, and it's pretty clear that they line up. And the views are gonna be off to the side except for lot 3, which is out on the end. And so they'll probably put bushes in between or something, but it's sort of a known
Okay.
situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
The numbers are, it looks like it's only 12 feet, that point from the base of the foundation down to the next
Oh.
building pad is
Oh, that's right.
1237 to 1225 is only
You
12
lowered
feet.
the pad.
it is about 12 feet.
It's 12 feet. How much did you lower the pad? I noticed in the,
We did lower the pad because when it was originally graded, it was graded incorrectly. So we're bringing it down to
okay. 'Cause
what it
you
was
had-
supposed to be.
You had a sketch where, you know, how much you're taking out.
Right, I think on
A2.1.
Yeah.
here, there's some grading that we're bringing it down to
Okay.
the approved grade pad, grade of, so that was just something in order just to bring it to that grade.
Any other questions, or?
Yeah, I had
Oh,
one
yeah.
real quick question. In that sort of Italian villa style and everything you studied, did you come across anything where you had sort of two-tone coloration on the stucco?
There can be. I mean, this doesn't have, it's a little simpler style in which it doesn't have coining or things like that, which you can add some color.
But you have like a
The band?
band kind of.
Usually you could do the lower band as a deeper hue and above if we wanted to. It depends if we can carry it around. Let me look at the color.
I mean, really, it's across the front, sort of.
It'll be this here.
So that is a case study that, I mean,
That it could happen.
Could happen.
It does start to accentuate that, and whether we want to do that or not in terms of that plane, because it starts to break it down to two distinct forms here and here once we add color to this mass.
The form does the work itself. I don't think that the color difference would add anything.
Is that dry, well, the package shows that you only have the one fan palm. Are they gonna have the other ones there on the other end? Because I don't see them on the drawing.
Actually, I think the SketchUp, instead of these, it's actually a jacaranda per the landscape plan.
Okay.
And I think,
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the
this is
perspective.
truer.
Okay.
I've got a couple of questions here.
Mhm.
Okay. If you've been to those of us who've been to the site know that at the back of the house, there is a very drastic drop off. Actually, very contrary to the design guidelines for Stone Gate. There are 3-4 pads there that are just like chopping off the top of that ridge. So we have to deal with that. I don't know where we have to turn. I think maybe it's just baked in at this point that the house is really gonna be on the, sitting on one of the major or minor ridge lines. But this study, those two figures farther back seem to be very, very different than than what you see in the field, because you have a tremendous drop off and then much higher ridges off in the distance behind the house. Could you explain what's going on with this study here? I don't have page numbers. Oh, yeah, I do, 74 and 75.
The printed copy doesn't have a page number that I can find.
Yeah, you got them right there. Peggy, you see these?
It's a drawing.
They're a couple of those diagrams. Okay.
Thanks.
This one here?
I'm referring to the two sectional diagrams.
Were they part of our sections?
Just before all the lot tracks,
It's
that line of sight stuff. Page before the line of sight
it's
stuff.
the line of sight study done by EGL Associates. Starts around page 71.
It's in the report itself, right?
Yeah, figure 2 to scale.
I don't think this is your study. I think this is from,
From our civil
Or
engineer, but,
consultant.
yeah.
aha. Double check where those where the views are taken from.
I don't think there's gonna be any problem for the more immediate houses down below. The angle will be too steep, but from a distance, if you're able to see the existing ridge line and the existing pads, and then of course there's a much higher ridge line behind that, you are going to see this and the other houses sitting very prominently on top of that
This
ridge.
house will be very visible. I was encouraged at the beginning because of the setback from the street.
Yeah.
Once you get up on the lot, you can see the whole world, but they're buying it for the view, you know.
He's
so
got the $1 million view,
he's
doesn't
got
he?
the $1 million view, but the million people are gonna see him as well.
The nice thing about these series of lots is they line up, so we'll only actually pick up the volume from down in Sierra Madre of one house, and they'll be piled behind each other like dominoes.
This one tends to look over into that canyon towards Bailey Canyon in that area.
Mhm.
And so you're looking down in where Elm is and those houses to there, more towards Pasadena, actually.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
a
the-
side view from like Upper Pasadena or Altadena, you'll see
All of them.
all of them, but from Sierra Madre, you'll probably.
Yeah, the most basic problem that we're dealing with is that back in the day, 10 years ago, when the subdivision was done and they were writing the design guidelines, that the right hand and the left hand just were not in sync. And I don't think there's any real way out of that right now.
So, did did you get as much of your question answered as we're gonna
Right.
get? Or
You know, could this be explained? I mean, or should we just ignore this study? I mean, it is part of the record here right now, so I just want to hear what you all think about
In
it.
terms of questioning, do you have a question as to how it was developed, or?
Yeah, or maybe you can explain something else to me about what I'm looking at here. Or should we just all let that
Well,
go?
it seems basically they've chosen
question,
a
Joe.
hillside spot, and that becomes your viewpoint, kind of an eye level, as you're looking up and seeing what would come into the view. So there's a certain prominent point that comes in and starts to block a little of the view of the actual lot, according to the spots they've chosen. So you would be looking above that, and according to their calculations, and I would have to trust that their calculations are correct. The way the house is situated on the lot, that point in the front would still tend to block the actual visibility. It would be from that point. I don't know going around the building at what point it's taken, honestly.
I'll let it go.
Okay.
It just does not look correct to me at all, but I'll let it go because I think we all understand what the reality is out in the site, right? If we accept that, we accept that.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions before we see this SketchUp? Okay, let's see the SketchUp model. Coming just on this one. It's gonna look even bigger because I'm further back in the way, so.
We should ask the city by holographic presentation equipment.
Let's get through these like that.
Right here in the center.
You're right in the center.
That's why it's
the
shaped
Death
like
Star.
this.
Well, that's right. They could have done it back in the 70s. Why can't we do it now?
You know, if you have a particle suspension system, you can do that. So you have to have like mist to do.
It's always so dry in here. That'd be nice.
John, just want to say that the only other thing we could do, if that's going to be an issue at all, if we don't just want to let it go, is to ask for story poles and see what the reality is then. And I don't know if it's worth it given the way the.
No, I think let's talk about that when we get to the deliberation stage, because I have things to say.
That's nice. Where's that?
Is that from Vincent's trip?
Looks like
We have enough
the lava
water.
flows on Hawaii or something.
A vacation photo?
Get the next slide. Here's my margarita.
I didn't know it was
Next
on,
Mac OS, Del Mar.
didn't know it was on the work server.
Do you have the time specific Kathleen on yours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not, I wasn't allowed to upgrade the cabinet because
Oh.
it's still breaking everything, but it now turns dark at night.
Okay, so this one still has the palm trees instead of the,
It wouldn't drag the mouse to the other side of this one.
Okay.
Kind of protein blind. Because it's up the
Ah,
screen.
good.
Oh.
possible to pull back farther so we can see it from a little bit farther away? So that's about as much as you have modeled. Any other views people want to see?
Is this reflective of the site being lowered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually very nicely drawn.
Thank you.
Is it really set that far back from that cut?
That didn't seem like it to me.
I had the impression that it would be a lot closer to that edge, but, you know.
The fence there.
It should drop a little closer to the fence.
Yeah.
There isn't that much of a flat area.
Right, yeah. I kind of paced it off and I was like,
Yeah, there really isn't a lot of room to,
Yeah.
places to go on that pad,
no.
you know. When you-
We've approved the house that's 2 lots up, right?
Lot 7, correct.
And we've seen a house for lot 6, and we continued it a while back.
A while back, and
Yeah.
as far as I know, that one won't be coming back.
Okay. On some of the other ones we've seen farther down in the, we've seen some of the perspectives on how they fit in with the other houses, and it would be really nice to be able to see that here as well. Because I think that in this one especially, you don't get the impression from this that the mountain is right behind and goes up. And so you've got, 6 and 7 there, and then the mountain behind, and that element of it is sort of lost on this.
I think the photo montage would give you a little
Right.
idea of that, where it starts showing the hillside, but it doesn't include the Lot
Yeah.
7.
Okay. Any other particular views people want to see on the SketchUp? Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the commission?
Actually, could you leave that up? That's
Yeah, I
okay.
would leave it up.
That's very helpful.
Okay, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for deliberation. Anybody like to start us off?
I'm really only struggling with sort of the front mass, the way the second floor and the ground floor sort of, I know they're shifted by the balcony or the terrace, but they're really like on top of each other. And so it's really flat, and I know part of that's inherent to the style too. It's sort of a stacked cake. But I'm just having a lot of heartburn with that. As you move around it, I think there's some nice things happening with it sort of stepping down or creating sort of cubes that are their own piece. The courtyard thing. So my question was kind of leading into that. There's a strong sort of datum broken up 2/3 of the way up, which is sort of that, wall corbel break, at the balcony. And I kept staring at the 2 sides and I kept wondering why does it seem so hot? It just seems really bottom tall, moving up. And sort of the treatments on the ends, which I know are stylistic to that sort of design, but it seemed like the porte cochere sort of feature was really abnormally tall. But then I realized there's a balcony that's attached to that bedroom, so that's kind of like completing that. So I was trying to figure out, like, is there a way?
It does make sort of a one-story element, like a 1.5
Yeah,
story
yeah.
element.
So I'm trying to like wrap my head around if, you know, I actually, when you said, you know, could it be two-toned and you would have made the bottom darker and the top, I actually was thinking the other way around. If that top third was a 2 shades darker in stucco or whatever, because part of the problem too is it's flat this way, but materially it's all the same. So it's not like there's a material change where, you know, like on a hacienda style or something where you had suddenly like dark wood or something, you know, and then you had stucco. It's all stucco. So, and they're stacked. So it just makes it really feel probably taller than it is. You know, visually it feels very like the mass is just rising. So you know, a simple solution to me would have been like to that top third potentially to have a darker tone on that part, and it just indexes with that sort of break line. The other thing I noticed that didn't happen on the sides on the balconies that's happening in the front is sort of this break where you have the ironwork, you know, and so it kind of, you know, it looks like, why do you do that? But it does provide some punctures into that bottom top part to sort of see through, you know, and so I think that helps kind of the porosity of the 2 stories. But on the sides, they're solid. Like the balconies are just, it's just more the stucco wall coming around. So I don't know. That's my real heartburn is sort of this treatment. It seems probably more massive than it probably actually physically is. And I just am trying to wrap my head around if there's a solution to help that seem more grounded, you know. I like the fact that they're actually shaving some more off, so it actually pushes the house down. I mean, it's still up on that sort of knoll, but I don't think there's much more that can be done in that respect. But other than that, I think the detailings are good. I think it's carried around throughout the design, whether you go to the side, the front, north, south, east, west. The motor court, like, I don't really have, I mean, it's going to be an unused space except to park cars, so like it is what it is, you know. I appreciate the fact that the garage isn't on the front, and it's pushed to the back, so that's a nice feature. And overall, I think I don't have a whole lot of heartburn with it. Not my personal favorite style, but that's irrelevant. So I mean, I can make all the findings related to it. I just have some issue with this sort of front part. So I don't know.
Can we rotate it like 45 degrees so we're looking at the corner? I think we'd see more of the ins and outs that way. The southwest corner to the front. There.
Okay.
Bob, yeah.
So-
your thoughts?
Initially, when I saw that it was gonna be at the back of the lot, I said, oh, good, this thing won't loom over the rest of the world, and it'll be hard to see from a lot of parts of the city, because we know that people are gonna look up there and say, how'd that big house get there? And we'll hear about it. Unfortunately, it is very visible to a lot of people over on in that whole valley from Elm and around, but it's not huge. What I picked up on exactly what you're looking at, that first of all, I like the architectural style. I'm okay with that. But in the old days, we would ask about the plate heights, but now we only ask about how tall the roof is. But if I asked about the plate heights, I believe it's these narrow, tall windows that gives this thing the impression that it is a lot taller than it is. I was very happy to look at the pitch of the roof because, oh, that's good. It'll keep the house down. So I'm fighting with the presentation of the house appears to be taller than it is. And while I know the numbers because of the roof height, the architectural style makes it appear to be elongated taller, and it doesn't do you service because you've done a good job of articulating and pushing some of what would have been massing into the back into single stories, which I respect you for, and I like that. That whole courtyard thing, I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. A place for family get together. No, it's gonna cars. Okay, fine. It's your place. The one thing I would like to thank staff for, and I would like you to keep in further presentations, is this map. But I would like you to somehow identify where the houses that we have approved are, because I'm looking at every project in relationship to its neighbors. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the design and the style. I think it's good considering all the others that you have. I think I would have flipped it so that it doesn't impact the people in lot whatever it is, four below it. It does present itself as being a lot taller than it is in numbers, and whether I'm not the architect, but if they have input in how that can be mitigated, I think that would be worthwhile. I think maybe some trees would also help soften it, and I don't necessarily mean the
Palm trees.
palm trees. I think something that would be, but you've already bought a view, so it's hard to do that. But I think in between the two lots may be very helpful. But I think I can make the findings on this.
I think that this submission really shows that we've been working together for a while now, and you're hearing what we're saying up here. It came as no surprise to me that this was actually being designed for somebody. There's definitely a higher degree of love in this house than we've seen in some of the other ones. You've done some very great things in the submission. The narrative, just going down point by point by point against the design guidelines, I thought was fantastic. The use of those covered windows on the west-facing house, in other words, there's room. It gets really hot on that side of the house. I have a house that faces that way in full sun, and it gets roasting there. So setting those bottom story windows slightly inside the way that you have is that's a great idea. The fact that you put the floor to ceiling glass windows on the sunrise side instead of the sunset side. I mean, there's some thoughtful design that happened here. The stacking that you did on 2/3 of the house, I really appreciated. I think you had a tough lot to work with in that this lot was purchased likely for that amazing view on the south side of the house, which is also the amazing view into your neighbor. And there was comment in the narrative, sections D1.6 and D1.7, that the house was really stacked. I don't think it was all that stacked on that southern plane, and that's the challenge I'm having. That's why I asked how far back it was. It sounds like almost all of us jumped to the immediate conclusion that if you would have flipped this 180 degrees, this conversation would have been over by now. But those views are what the house is for, and I get that. I was somewhat comforted by the fact that that patio or the deck it looks like 8 feet in the clear. So the view concern I had was lessened, because by the time that a 6 foot tall person is standing 8 feet back from the view, they're not going to be able to look down into their neighbors, and the bottom story is going to look into the roof. So I'm less concerned with that. The west facing part of the house, while it is a bit of a monstrosity, I saw a different view than you did, Commissioner Spears. nobody on Elm is going to be able to see anything up there. That is an incredibly steep. There's one house that even has a lot there to see. You'd have to be over a couple of hills. So I don't feel that that westerly view is really going to have it. There's no amount of breaking it up or massing that would change what that view is going to look like. I was more concerned about having basically a story and a half of straight stucco wall on that south side. That's it. And I think that Manish came to the same concern. I wish we could change it from an Italianate to a Spanish style and make that entire second story wrought iron with those columns like you have on the front of the house, so that then you actually had some articulation and view. It would really break that up, I think, because that straight stucco wall all the way up, floor to railing, is what's given me a little heartburn on the side. But putting the courtyard there to hide the cars that are going to be there, I mean, the attention to detail here was great. So I think it's a good piece. Thank you.
I won't repeat what you said. Okay. But I'm perfectly happy with it's the way they designed it. I think it's designed very well. And I wish all of our submittals were this good right off, you know. The issue of the visual height, you know, you were just talking a minute ago about, well, from Elm you're not going to see it. And I understand what you're saying, because I drove around Elm and Upper Auburn and all of that, and yes, you're really not going to see anything there at all. You're going to see it from a distance. Mm-hmm. You see it from a distance, and it's going to look pretty small from a distance, in a way, right? The profile, the real issue to me is whether we're going to be comfortable with making that finding that really has to do with the profile of the house, not how much is first floor, how much is second, whether one is a different color than the other, but from that farther distance, are we going to be happy with the overall profile of the thing sitting on the ridge, and that even though that's a one ridge, then there are other bigger mountains in the background. So you'll see it right there, but our job is not to try to make a house invisible anyway, right? So I would just like us to be comfortable, if we can, with the the handy's been dealt in terms of, well, who put the pads on the ridge to begin with, and if we're willing to say that's the best we can do, and we're willing to make the finding, then I'd approve the thing tonight. So I'll just leave it up to how you all feel about that ridgeline issue.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we're sort of stuck with the guidelines and the settlement that sort of the hand that's been dealt us. And I totally understand the fact that where they want to put the view in the balcony. I think it's almost comical that we have an objective L14 that talks about protecting the views, which the objective is about protecting the views to and from the hillside areas. So it's more about the hillside views, but the purpose seems to be to maintain the image of the identity of a city as a village of the foothills. Well, it doesn't really, big houses up in the, doesn't give us the idea that they're a village, but at the same time, we're stuck with but by right they're able to build. And I think that's probably as good as we're going to get. And I like the overall design. I think the architect did an outstanding job at designing an Italianate, type home, and the client's getting the best bang for his buck, that's for sure. I can make the findings, based on the limitations.
Okay, I think it's a really nice design, and it actually kind of works, that an Italianate box up on the hill. It it because it does meet all the guidelines and the restrictions that it had to fit within. And I think the design is excellent, and it's one of those homes that you'll drive by and admire if you actually, like in San Marino or Pasadena, except it's going to be up there and nobody's going to be driving by. But the design is excellent, inside and out, and it responds to the views and the neighbors, and putting the motor court on the north side keeps everything cooler in the cars, and there's really no view that way, so it's a good choice. So I looked at the whole book and looked at the findings, and I can, make the findings to approve this. My concern is that it's going to be maybe the first one built, and it's going to be a shock to the citizens of Sierra Madre, because it won't be nestled in amongst the other houses, and it's going to be hard to explain for a while. But I like it a lot, and I think it's
You're right.
Yeah, I guess for me, the concerns are bigger than the benefits that a lot of commissioners have discussed. To me, this is the classic case of really good design that doesn't fit the site. And I think we looked at the examples that you provided, and they were all flatland examples. When I first looked at this, I thought, wow, this is a really cool house. And then when I started looking at the perspective, I was like, wow, it really does stick out, though, doesn't it? And then when I went up to the site and I saw how prominent the building pad is, which is, and I'll grant you, there's a handicap here because you got a pad that you got to pad, right? And you've got to deal with that pad. But then you built this very boxy thing that, as Manish said, that you've got 2 stories that come right up, and most of the massing is on the southwest corner, which is the most prominent section. And then you've done design elements that, although make, I'm sure, the house very much more functional, it also maximizes instead of minimizes the appearance of bulk and maxing. You have this courtyard that's a really cool feature. If the house were flipped 180 degrees, it would limit the look of it, but it's hidden behind. And so from the outside, that could just be more house. And you've got a porte cochere that doesn't count in your square footage, but that's a whole nother room. And so you have a 6,000 square foot look house. And the massing is to the south. The mountains are to the north. The way to make this blend in, and we can't have them be invisible. That's ridiculous. We could never require that. But we can say that they blend in. They fit with the setting. And to me, the massing should be on the north. And you should have the 1-story sections come to the south. And you've got this big driveway that goes up. One way to deal with the car would be to just have the driveway go straight in and have a garage there. Drop the whole mass. Then you could get rid of that courtyard for the car, turn the whole thing 180 degrees, and have a fabulous courtyard that would just have these massive, wonderful views. And instead of having a porte cochere, you just have that thing sunken down. I think that could demonstrably reduce the impact and attack of the house, but keep the look. I echo everyone's thoughts about the level of design and the style of the house. I love the architecture of the house. And if it were on a flat lot, I would be all good, but it's not. And if it were just flipped around, it would be better, but it's not. So I have too much heartburn with the imposingness of this on the prominent location to make the findings with regard to the way it blends in and fits with the feeling of the hillside. I'm not picking with the architecture or the design for the house as a house, just how it fits on the lot. And I think there are ways that it could have been reduced. I also think that you've got a solid wall running along the whole north side, which is I'm trying to get you some privacy, I would assume, but then that builds the bulk and massing and imperviousness of the whole approach. And you've already have an elevator in. So if you had a a garage that was subterranean and you effectively had 3 stories, that wouldn't be a problem because you've already got that elevator that could bring you up. So I don't know. I think there are ways you could achieve all of your program and look and very much reduce the impact on the neighbors. So I can't support this project it is, and I would really like to continue it and see those revisions.
John, just as a, just sort of a, I don't want to say to be argumentative, because I agree with you. One of the projects that they made on lot 25 where they dug down that one basement down, the whole purpose was that people on Carter were going to go right by and see this thing looming up. And that was a great idea. They, you know, I thought they could have done a little bit more of that, sort of that subterranean look. And I thought about with this lot too, on that one corner where you're talking about flipping it around. But unfortunately, this house is, in the design, is about the views, obviously. And so I was thinking, if you dig that down, I wanted them to put something down low, but then how do you get to the driveway? How do you get to the back of the house? Maybe, like you said, a subterranean garage or something you could dug down to.
Yeah, I wouldn't think about putting any living space down below. I think that would be, the views are what matters and being out, but if you had that, the cars don't need to see, right? And so if the cars were down below and you've got an elevator that comes up, you could flip the house 180 degrees and have that courtyard that's usable and has the great views. And you could take the mass, you could get rid of the mass of the porte cochere and take the mass of the garage and bring it down, and that would reduce your, and the courtyard, because it would be in the front, it wouldn't be blocked. It would make the house look 1,000, 1,500 square foot smaller.
And still have southwest views on that second, you know, that patio area, which is what they're trying
Yeah,
to
in a lot of ways you could get better views, because if you had your first story elements on the southwest, you know, you could have patios that go out onto those, and then you would have just.
Yeah,
I think there's a question, just a matter of the numbers of laying it out in section, as to whether you can get, if you've got the garage down low, that lowest level like you're talking about, whether you can still get your 2 stories above that so that you don't lose those views off in that direction without having to push the mass of the house taller to get above the garage.
Right, and I you know,
That-
I haven't run any of those
That's in the
numbers.
drawing, we
Right.
can't predict that, right?
If you remember, we had, I don't know what lot it was, one of the first ones was Spanish, and I remember early on, we sort of flipped the whole thing as well, because it's kind of oriented the same way. Granted, it was like a flag lot, but we wound up flipping it because, yeah, I think it had a porte cochere too, just so that the motor court faced south. And so it was a U shape, but the U was facing southwest.
Right.
And it was for the same reasons as kind of what's happening here, is that's your most prominent sort of corner, you know. And by doing what you're saying, you actually could gain sort of a, I wouldn't call it a backyard, but you'd have this space that's pushed down the garage, and you wouldn't need the porte cochere, so that all that suddenly becomes kind of your side yard, you know, which is open to the view, which actually could be really nice. So
Yeah, when I was walking up there, that driveway is very steep. And I thought, why not just go in? And because, quite honestly, the courtyard for cars seemed like I said, you know, I mean, it's a, so you could, with the views, the courtyard would be so much better.
Right, I mean, I think there's a certain amount of, well, if it was my house, what would I do? And we can hypothetical that all night, right? But that doesn't really go into the findings, and I can't base my vote on findings on what I'd rather have it do, and I wouldn't rather have the cars be the king of I think what could be a wonderful courtyard. But I think the fact that the courtyard is hidden behind massing means that it makes the whole appearance of the building bigger. And if the courtyard were, as you said, Manish, flipped so that it was on the south, then it would open up and it would reduce the impact of the building. Even if you use it for cars, although it would be hard to use it for cars there. So I think, to be clear, I don't think it's a good idea to use it for cars, but that's not in any way the basis for why I would be in favor of moving that courtyard.
John just needs a basketball hoop out in the courtyard.
Well, I mean, you could use it for cars and people. I mean, I think that's a possibility. So I don't think it would necessarily be only for driving over. But
I want to push
that's
your
here nor
idea.
there.
I want to push your idea a little further, if I can. Somebody said a few minutes ago that all of the examples that were shown of Italianate architecture were on flat lots. One of the most prominent traditional building forms in Italy are the hillsides.
Right.
The hillside houses. Okay, not the flat lots. I think that there probably could be some very, very good precedents found. And you know what? If you turn the entire thing around 180 degrees, the bottom, and you had, because over there, you're going to have to riffle in anyway, or the driveway would be way too steep, right? So you're virtually going to have. You could have your portico share if you wanted to, because a courtyard there with everything else set back behind it, but in 2 stories above, that portico share in that courtyard would just be down really, really low, and so you can have it. You can have it both ways in this case, and it would in the courtyard. The courtyard, forces the setback from the downslope, like you were talking about wanting also.
Mm-hmm.
We're just running a tab with excavation and retaining walls. That's all.
Yeah, like digging in a subterranean garage or whatever and bringing another room for that area. It's
I think that there are ways without being that extreme to break up that massing. Right now, it's just a wall up to the railing, the 2nd story railing. If you do something on that 2nd story to reduce the mass of that wall, I think visually you break it up a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think you soften it, but you still, I mean, the mass is still there. Whereas, and you've got, this courtyard that you've surrounded, and so the massing is presented on the outside, and so if that courtyard were in the front, the massing would be in the back, and it wouldn't look as big. That's not to say you couldn't soften that massing. I agree with that. Whether that softening is enough, I tend to doubt that would get there for me, but I think there's people on the commission ready to vote in favor of it already, so it probably would for some. So, I think it really depends on how much the applicant is set on this particular design and how much flexibility they have. I don't know if you all want to consider some of these elements, or if you just want to say this is it, we're done, vote on it or not. It's your project.
Well, I think we would be open to maybe trying to soften. I mean, if we could work with the existing plan to soften, to open up that 2nd floor balcony to create a little more kind of laciness and openness. I think we can definitely look at that, because I think that could still work with the style.
What about color changes or material changes?
I mean, we can look at color. I think
I would actually darken the top, like the receding parts, because
have it kind of go away.
then that single story part reads as the stucco, the lighter stucco element, and the top sort of goes away.
I mean, we're definitely open to studying that and see how that would.
Or a material change, I don't know.
They never did that in Italy.
Difficult, because
Like
the
a
only
stone.
other option would be to do stone.
Like flat, and I mean not stacked, but like a flat
Right, like
Italian.
travertine or
Yeah.
limestone,
I like
which
stone.
adds to the expense.
I don't know if that
Yeah.
But definitely, I mean, we'll be open to color as an opportunity and see if we can
Italian ink.
study a slightly deeper tone to the upper portion,
Because then that would blend into the.
and then see how that goes to the rest of the house. In doing that, I think maybe most of the house would go that tone, and then that lower piece would be the lighter tone, so we would have to play with it and see how.
You might just change the hue, like if you look at
Right.
look at the villa at El Verno, as opposed to the much brighter tan that you're showing
Right.
here, that might bring it down a
Kind of
little
a tonal
too.
difference, I think we can definitely look at.
Yeah.
But the more structural changes, you would tend to push back on that, I would.
Well,
I
the
would think.
structural change, in terms of flipping, I mean, that becomes a larger question, and depending on how the commissioners feel. But I think overall, the mass has been concentrated towards the center, so it's not a full length of the south elevation that we have a two-story mass. We do have kind of a smaller bulk with the back coming down towards the slope. And that way we can take advantage of the views at that point. And really, it's really just that mass and that would have the opportunity.
Yeah, I think something that you said really hit the nail on the head is that the slope goes up and the house goes down, right?
Yeah,
The house starts high and then goes down towards the hill instead of mirroring
right, right.
the hill, so
And I think
breaking
if,
up that massing.
yeah,
And if you'd
'Cause
done as,
it does step down on the back half of the house,
Yeah.
but it doesn't step down on the front. It
No.
starts full height.
On the front,
at
On the
that corner.
on the sort of
on the
southwest.
south
On the
elevation.
southwest
We do have that,
corner.
the one-story element of the living dining room, which is
Is that
the,
on still? Just,
the balcony for the master. So
Did it
that becomes a
disappear?
one-story
it's
element.
off? Oh.
Then we have,
But it doesn't become a one-story element because on the same plane of that,
It's
it
a
stays on
little
the
higher.
same plane all the way up to the handrail,
Right.
which is what, 40 inches? Is that what a
42
handrail?
inches.
42
Well, so-
inches. So
42.
That's what got me
Yeah, it's a
thinking
floor.
too,
it's
is
a floor and a half.
Right.
it's 42 at least to the top, but had that, and I was thinking in my head, like, if that balcony just disappeared, like, because it wraps around, right? It kind of goes around the corner.
on that one, the master one is just on the south
southwest.
elevation, captured by the long
it's just
extended
the
wall.
I mean, it would almost
like
been better if it
23
was
feet long or
if
something.
it was a roof, like capping that, like no balcony, but just a roof plane with a tile roof, whatever, coming up to the below the windows or whatever that is. You know, it wouldn't be doors, but when,
I see what
Oh,
you're
it
In
would,
other words,
it would be a line that broke that
it
whole,
would be a roof plane that made
Right.
it look like that corner is lower than the second story, which is another 10 feet up from that. But you would have to forego that step out balcony or something, you know, because part of what's happening there is you've got the ground floor, which I'm sure, I don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another
spaces,
point, right?
But it's got 9 feet plus probably a foot of structure plus the balcony, so, you know, you're looking at 13 and a half feet.
And it's an 8-foot
more.
wide balcony. If it was a 4-foot wide balcony, all of a sudden there'd be a 4-foot step in to the handrail, and that would, and the roof line stopping there. Then that
Oh,
would
yeah.
be more of a setback as well. But because it's the full 8 feet, it's just
Right,
Floor
but
and a
for the flip side of that is programmatically, an 8-foot balcony is way better than a 4-foot balcony, right? So.
No, yeah.
the setback is better, yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, that's trade-offs.
I agree.
I mean, those are visual tricks to break that up, but that doesn't structurally change anything. I mean, I guess it removes an element or a feature, but
Even a 2-foot difference there, if it was a 6-foot balcony instead of an 8-foot, and there was some kind of
Yeah.
But what's
massing
interesting,
difference.
like you're already cutting the pad, you're shaving the top, right?
Shaving it just
Like
to
2 or
bring it
3
down to
feet?
the approved, it's about 3 feet at the worst case.
And then it tapers.
It tapers.
And I know in the past we've always said these have already been manicured and graded. Like, if it helps the project, what's more grading? I mean, I'm taking cost off the table, but point being, like, we've already monkeyed with these things.
Yeah, we're not talking about natural grade. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that
yeah.
goes to what you were
So-
saying about the ridge and where the pads are cut.
And you're cutting that to just level it off or to
Level it to
actually?
the approved pad height.
Okay.
The way it was graded, it wasn't graded to the correct height, it's a little higher. So we're bringing it down to the approved pad height per the settlement, I believe.
I'm just thinking out loud, like if you cut for the garage, like I don't know right now, whatever the approved pad height to the street or the curb, what is that difference, like 8, 9, 8?
Depends from the driveway.
Where the
we're probably
garage,
looking about
where the courtyard,
the courtyard.
It's significant.
it's gotta be.
If I'm standing on the street, I cannot see the pad. I mean, it's.
That's
The
the,
south corner would be the more extreme side.
Right.
yeah, but like where the driveway is.
Driveway probably 12, let's say.
That doesn't-
Right,
To
well,
the
that's what,
portico
and that's
share
what John's trying to
from
say,
that
is that
area.
you're looking right at that corner where the lot goes up the most, and then you're just staring at this thing, which is what gives you all that view, which is nice, but
What I'm saying is I'm trying to get to where it actually, I mean, there is more grading, obviously. We're not trying to hide the numbers, but like, instead of having this steep driveway, like you could leave the garage there, but just put it down to the street.
Yeah, I mean, just put a straight.
Because
I
you're
mean,
already, I mean, you've got enough of a difference. I think it's gotta be at least 10 feet.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, you know, you know, question the utility of the motor court for playing basketball, but you're also gonna have to turn around in that thing, which
Well,
to
it's a
me,
hammerhead. It's
it's
more
gonna
like
be sort of a pain in the, you know, compared to just a standard sort of garage.
Well, the paving, the paving goes off to the uphill side. It's not it's not, there's more of a T for backing out. You're backing out beyond the building line.
Well, it's like 1239 at the motor court.
Probably about
And
8
the
to 10
street
feet
is
from the driveway
1228.
to the drive,
It's like 11 feet
somewhere around.
based on these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
1228 and a half to 1239 and a half. So, what is that? My math is not my strong suit. 11 feet. So, I mean, you're like that idea isn't crazy.
Thank you.
Yeah, but guys, remember that, you know, when you're talking about how prominent that corner is, you're all talking like you're standing right there at the curb. Who's going to be there, right? Look at the
Yeah,
site.
but-
This is not.
But Joe, that's
It's a
how
matter of what
the
you see from
hillside.
a distance.
But that's what the hillside code talks about. It talks about trying to match the landforms and blend in. I mean, we can all pick a place to stand that we either like or dislike, and that kind of cherry picking. I don't think.
And
is-
we've
is-
applied
is-
that criteria to all of these lots. So like, I mean, what I'm saying is, I don't see why this would get a free pass. We've looked at every lot in the same manner, like, does it start to do relative to its site? What is it doing? You know?
Right.
Yeah, I guess I'm going easily on that right at the moment because there's such a catch-22 built in by the fact that they chop these pads into the top of that little, right on the top of the ridge. It starts the project off.
Well, I think we've
With a lot of
we've
different-
all
That's-
acknowledged
yeah,
that.
same.
Yeah,
That's
that's
yourself.
yeah.
That
Okay.
were, yeah.
I'd like to say that the houses that were shown as the inspiration were on flat lots. And that really does make a difference. John, you made a very good point. And you're not going to get the same feeling from the public building a house, the house you've shown, which is like those on the flat lot, from the people down below looking up, because it's going to be a box and not an awesome piece of architecture from that distance. And as much as we can all sit here and go, oh, this is a really cool plan and the details are wonderful, and it actually does fit within the criteria, the general public is going to see a box, because as John pointed out and Manish, the southwest corner is really standing tall and proud and lots
Yeah,
of stucco.
it's very prominent, I think.
And as much as I cringe at the idea of just flipping a property 180 degrees, a plan on a site because it's designed, this is really designed site specific. I do see the value of putting the lower arms out to the south and the higher mast in the back at the north, which ends up with the courtyard in the south end. So switching the shape of the U does make a lot of sense to make it feel awesome on the property. Like, you know, those houses looked on flat sites.
Yeah,
And-
for me, the design, go ahead.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's the Pasadena Main Library, it has that big mass at the back, but the lower pieces in the front. If you could go more that direction, it would feel better and more awesome.
Yeah.
And so,
See, what I was trying to get at is if the garage is taken off, like you were suggesting, off the table, so to speak, off the pad table, there's more latitude to move the piece. It's not literally a flip, because because part of the problem is if you just flip it, the garage actually gets
Right.
cheaper. So we're not, it's a plan flip in the sense of it'll allow you to move some of the parts more north, because
Right.
that square is taken off the table and it's literally pushed down. So now you can do anything you want on top of it, and the porte cochere goes away because you don't need it because your garage is there. So like now you've got probably 25 feet by the depth of that pad to push stuff, if that makes sense.
So
it's not a
I can
flip.
really agree with what you guys are saying. I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying about the mass relative to the shape of the hills and so forth. I don't think that we're going to really get anything significantly, because we're seeing the house more from a distance. I don't think that we're going to get anything really significant in terms of improvement just by fiddling with the configuration as it is right now. I think that you really do have to like flip some stuff around and maybe go to a much lower elevation on the porte cochere in the garage and look at it more like Italian hill town. I'm afraid that that the only way we're really going to get the kind of level of compliance you're talking about is going to be with asking for the more radical moves that way. I really don't think that we're going to gain too much by just like fiddling with it.
Well, I mean, another idea is, because when you look at it, even in the 3D model, it's like you're dealing with 3 levels, the site being the first, because of it's basically a knoll set from the street at about 10 or 12 feet, 11 at the driveway, so by the time you get to the southwest corner, it's probably, I don't know, 13, 14 feet.
Right.
It's gotta be more. So that's like almost the base. On top of that, you've got the mass of 2 more floors. You know, I'm not talking about what you see from half a mile away. I'm talking about what you see on the micro level at the street. So it's presenting itself really tall, and part of it's this first layer, which is the site. So one other idea, leave everything the same, but you could drop the whole thing even more.
Drop the
I mean,
pad.
if you're already cutting 3 feet,
Well, you could grade a lot more, yeah.
you could
I mean,
drop it another.
At some point, it's right. I mean, obviously, up here we're working with an unlimited budget on your project. So, and you know, I don't know how much that grading is going to cost you and the retaining walls and all that. So you need to look at those things. But I do think that. You know, I mean, from my perspective, I don't think some of the softening issues that were discussed are going to get me to where I would be able to support the project. And that's not to say that it's not, you know, really good architecture. I think if you look at the Southwest Museum, that's very prominent, right? And it sticks out, and it's very cool. but that's sort of not what we're going for in the hillside, and that's what I'm afraid we're looking at here. And as Manish was saying, it's going to read as a 3-story house because you've got 1 story of dirt, and that's sort of the hand you're dealt with. I get that. But my idea was maybe you could work with that. And I don't know, maybe that's cost prohibitive. But it seemed like in some of the other houses, we've gone subterranean and that wasn't cost prohibitive. And here, instead of one where you're sort of digging down and making little light wells and whatnot, this is a much better case for just putting a box of a garage in and exit and the, you put the laundry room or something and the elevator, and it would work a lot better. But you can work on all those options and see what works for you and bring back what you think is gonna get you at least a majority of the commission, or maybe even all of us, and move forward.
Yeah, I second that, because the design that you've submitted is stellar. The problem is the site. And that's where I had my problem. That's why I started with, if you flipped it, it would be more appropriate for the site and the neighbors and all kinds of stuff. When I was walking up there, I said, this is a perfect place just to drive your cars into a subterranean. You could still put the panel for the drive-through however you want, so it would be part of but it would be, because it would be lower, it wouldn't contribute to the bulk of the whole. But I think, with the skills that you've shown in this design, I think that this is not an insurmountable task.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning. I'm with you guys. I have no problem with the design. I think it's actually, and the layout is well done. As one of the other commissioners says, I can see there's a lot of love put into sort of how this was developed or birthed. So I feel like that's not the issue, but that front southwest mass is just, I would love to have seen another alternate to that, because I don't know if that's the best for the microsite, meaning what you see in that neighborhood or that context immediately. Down the hill, on streets or in town, we can all pick a view where you either see a little dot of white stucco or you don't see anything. We can sit here and parse that all day long. But I think in the immediate context, I think that mass is accentuated by the design and the cards you were dealt with the site. So I think a little more attention and love to that, however that happens. I think another stab or another bite at the apple would be helpful.
Well, do you think we should be trying to just ask him to make some determination about? We have 2 different conceptual ideas going on here, in effect. Should we direct him on one, or just see what he?
No, he's done an excellent job with the design. So I believe that there's a skill set there to come to some kind of resolution.
Yeah, I
We
think
should just see what he.
I'm not,
has.
on this one, I'm not comfortable at all dictating.
we've given a lot of direction. I think. I think to one thing I'd just like to echo what Manish was saying is that if you look at this neighborhood, this street, you're going to have 4 houses, right? Because 3 and 4 are tied, right? There's only one house there. And isn't there a condition that that's going to be 1 story?
Well, the lot 3 will remain an open, more or less an open space landscape lot.
Right, but does lot 4, I thought there was a condition that had to be 1 story.
I don't believe it does.
Okay, it doesn't, okay. Well, I think you're gonna have, because that one is stepped down quite a bit, it's not gonna look as prominent. And my concern is you're gonna have these 4 houses, and I think what we did on 7, I really like the way that was pushed back, that this one is gonna sort of, stand out amongst the
Push
4.
back and down in from.
Yeah,
from this one.
Right, so. Do you want us to continue to a date certain, or
Well, that would be great. It'll give us an opportunity to kind of go back and see the opportunities we have with the plan, talk to the client, and see what we can come back with.
Okay.
So if we're looking at dates, I don't know if maybe March 5th. If you wanted to do something sooner, that's February 20th. We have 2 cases on there already.
That might be a little quick.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, we're gonna be chewing on that stuff on that one, right? Is that the one where we're gonna do the
Commercial code?
commercial code?
That's the 2nd of
Oh,
February.
okay.
So we have February 20th, which is one of their projects coming back that was continued to this date, and another new construction in town. So that leaves us, we have 2 cases there. That pushes us to March 5th or March 19th.
If we could do March 19th, that would give us the opportunity to work on it and then give you the review period. That would work with us if it's acceptable.
Oh, yeah.
And do you feel you have enough sort of direction to kind of?
Definitely. I
Okay.
think the idea, I mean, the main.
Sometimes too much is too much
moving the
information.
pants, you can join the commission.
I'm ready to go home.
The basics of your comments. A lot of it is, it's really just the massing and visibility of the south elevation, and see what we can do in order to minimize that, so.
I guess
we'll go back.
I was asking more for me because I've been in your position and I left going, oh my gosh. So.
I'd like to just make one suggestion, and this is kind of a dirty architect to architect thing. Okay, and when there's that other higher ridge off in the distance behind, don't do your renderings showing all bright sky behind the house. It really just gives the impression that the thing is popped up there. Where actually, from a lot of the views that we're talking about here, you see a lot more mountain and a lot less sky off behind the house. And I'm just being facetious about being dirty. I think that would be a more realistic way to be viewing the house right now.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to continue to, what did we say, March 19th?
19th.
March 19th.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, let's see what we have next. That's our only public hearing, so we will go to Planning Commission reports. Anybody have anything to report?
I have nothing.
Okay, then we'll come to staff reports.
Just to let you know, at our next city council meeting in January, the city council will be having a discussion item regarding unreinforced masonry buildings and the approach and how we want to move forward with that with an ordinance as well. So we're seeking direction from council to direct the planning commission to begin drafting an ordinance for unreinforced masonry.
Right. I think there's one of our commissioners that might attend that.
You will.
And how about the other issue, the soft story?
Soft first story, we're going to take that thereafter. So we do have a consultant on board who's basically our building official for the city of Sierra Madre. So we're using him to prepare the ordinance for the URM, and then we'll continue with the soft first story. They've done a site survey and took information that Bob Spears and Rod Spears had also evaluated from what was originally identified back in the 80s as identification of the soft first story buildings.
Are you using Hong or Jim Guerra for that?
Jim Guerra.
Thanks.
So that's what's coming up on our docket.
Okay, great. Okay, anything else? Well, then we will continue to let's see, our next meeting is February 6th, right?
That's correct.
What's
Okay.
on that?
It's a continued project from CETT which was Lot 9, I believe. Lot 9, 1 Nathaniel Terrace.
Long back one?
Yes, and you pushed it further up the hill. And then another new project, it's a demo of existing house and then replacement structure, 2-story house.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Vincent, do we have time for like a part 1 presentation of SB 330 on that date? Take about like 10
We
minutes
could,
without question,
We
and
could.
20 minutes with questions.
okay.
ADU stuff.
All right.
We would, of course, lead with that, right?
Good, yeah. I think, have we received requests for permits for those ADUs?
For, under the new requirements, not yet.
Good.
Okay.
There's interest, we'd get calls, but no submissions yet.
People have asked me, standing in front of Starbucks, hey, can I build? And I said, well, you better check the law. I have a PowerPoint I can show you, but that's not.
Well, Bob, you'd be
I'm no
really,
lawyer, but-
you'd be really happy the other day talking with an investor. She just said, well, it'd be real easy to just get a shipping container and put it on your lot.
There's the nightmare.
I said, no, I don't think that's gonna work here.
Well, that may be our inspiration for something.
Well, with that fine thought, we will adjourn until February 6th.